we return to stories when we are heartbroken, when we are confused, when we are healing. Something ancient and sacred inside us knows. Stories help us make sense of things that feel too big for language. But why? Why do we turn to fiction, poetry, or myth when we are trying to find our way back to ourselves? In this episode, I want to take you on a journey, not just through literature, but through time, through psychology, and into the human soul. We will explore how stories evolved, what they do to the brain, and how they help us heal spiritually and emotionally. So grab a cup of tea, light a candle, and let's begin. Long before we had science, or therapy, or reading language, we had stories. In ancient caves, humans painted images on the walls. Hunters, animals, stars. Around fires, elders told stories to guide, warn, inspire, or console. Storytelling wasn't entertainment, it was survival. Myths and folk tales carry wisdom about death, danger, love, birth, betrayal, forgiveness. In West African griot traditions, oral storytellers were spiritual leaders and healers. In indigenous cultures, stories weren't just remembered, they were lived. Even sacred texts like the Bhagavad Gita, the Bible, the Tao teaching are not instruction manuals, they are narratives. We remember truths better when they're wrapped in stories. Why? Because the brain and also the heart are wired for narrative. Modern neuroscience tells us that storytelling isn't just meaningful, it's biological. When we listen to a story, your brain begins to mirror the storyteller's brain. This is called neural coupling, a phenomenon discovered by researchers at Princeton. Your brain doesn't just absorb the words, it feels them. If a character runs, your motor cortex activates. If they cry, your brain releases oxytocin, the hormones of connection and empathy. In a way, reading is reliving. That's why fiction can feel more real than reality. Psychologist Keith Otley found that people who read fiction regularly score higher on empathy tests. Another study found that trauma survivors who wrote and shared their stories began to heal faster, emotionally and even physically. Stories help us process emotions. They bring meaning to chaos. They allow us to re-alter our pain. When we go through pain, it can feel like we are doing it formless. There's no structure, no beginning, no end. That's where story comes in. It gives our pain a container. It transforms it into something we can hold, rather than something that holds us. The act of telling our story, even to ourselves, turns suffering into meaning. In narrative therapy, people learn to separate themselves from their problems by creating a storyline. Instead of "I am broken," it becomes "There was a time when I felt broken," but the story continued. That shift is everything. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychologist, once said, "Those who have a why to live can be almost anyhow." Stories help us find our why. I wonder what stories or poems change you. Maybe it was Harry Potter during your childhood when you needed magic to believe in again. Maybe it was Jane Eyre when you need to remember your self-respect. Or maybe it was poetry, Mary Oliver, Rumi, or Sylvia Plath, meeting you in the dark and say, "You are not alone. I have been there too." Some books changed me forever, but nothing like poems. The Summer Day by Mary Oliver. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is your plan to do with your own wild and precious life? The Guest House by Rumi. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. Life Doesn't Fry Me by Maya Angelou. Shadows on the wall, noises down the hall. Life doesn't fry me at all. Bad dogs barking loud, big ghosts in a cloud. Life doesn't fry me at all. Let's talk about the spiritual side of storytelling, because at its core, healing is a spiritual act. Stories allow us to step outside ego, to imagine, to surrender, to connect. Reading becomes a ritual. Writing becomes a release. Stories are how the soul remembers itself. Rumi once wrote, "Don't get lost in your pen. Know that one day your pen will become your cure." And so often it is through story that the cure arrives. The divine speaks not only through prophets, but through poets, through fiction, through your journal, through your own voice, trembling but true. Storytelling is not just personal, it's cultural. Our ancestors used stories to protect memory, language, land, identity. During times of oppression, diaspora, stories were resistance. Think of the songs of enslaved Africans in the Americas. Think of Jewish folk tales told in secret. Think of queer writers sharing the truth in coded metaphors when the world refused to listen. Story keeps us alive, not just individually, but collectively. It's how we say, "We were here, this mattered, don't forget us." So I invite you, gently and without pressure, to ask yourself, what is the story I'm telling myself today? Is it one of fear, one of defeat, or is there a deep story waiting underneath it? One of resilience, rebirth, love. Your story may not be finished, but it's already sacred. We need stories to heal, because healing isn't about forgetting. It's about weaving what happened into who we are. Stories are how we remember, how we transform, how we love each other more deeply. So keep reading, keep writing, keep living the story only you can tell. And if you feel called, share with me in the comments. What is one story that helped you heal? I would love to know. Until next time, be gentle with your story. It's still unfolding.